Chapter 12 of The Cat of Bubastes, A Tale of Ancient Egypt. This recording is in the public domain. The Cat of Bubastes, by G. A. Henty. Chapter 12. The Death of Ameres. The days passed slowly at the farm. The lads went out listlessly to watch the cattle treading in the seed and the other operations on the lands, but they were too anxious as to what was going on in the city to feel the slightest interest in the work of the farm. The second and fourth days after their coming, Jethro had paid them a short visit to say that there was no change in the situation. The officer in command of some troops whom the king had sent down to within a short distance of the house had come down to the mob as they were shouting outside the gate, and threatened them with the severe displeasure of the king unless they desisted from their demonstrations, but had been answered with shouts, "The gods are above all kings, and not even kings can protect those who insult them." Amense, he said, on the occasion of his second visit, had left the house and taken up her abode with some relations in the city, declaring that the anxiety and disgrace were killing her. She had wished to take Mysa with her, but the girl had positively refused to leave her father, and as her mother seemed indifferent whether she went or stayed, she had had her way. In a private talk with Amuba, Jethro said, "It is a relief to us all that she has gone. She was bad enough before you went, but for the last 3 days she has been doing nothing but weep and bewail herself till the house has been well nigh unbearable. Ameres goes backward and forward between his house and the temple, walking unmoved through those gathered near his door, who are for the most part quiet when he passes, being abashed by the presence of one who has so long been held in high esteem among them. As for Mysa, she seems to think only of her father. The Hebrew girl is a great comfort to her, for while the example of their mistress and the shouts of the populace have terribly scared the other maids, and they go about the house in fear and trembling, Ruth is quiet and self-contained as if she were again in her quiet cottage with her grandfather. She greatly comforts and sustains Mysa, and Ameres said to me only this morning that Mysa was fortunate indeed in that Chebron had furnished her with so brave and steadfast a companion at a time like this." On the evening of the 5th day Jethro came suddenly in at the house. The boys started to their feet as he entered, for they saw at once that something terrible had happened. His face was stained with blood, his breath came short, for he had run for the 6 intervening miles between the farm and the city at the top of his speed. "Quick, my lord," he said, "there is not a moment to lose. The whole matter has been discovered, and ere long they will be here in pursuit of you." "What of my father?" Chebron exclaimed. "I will tell you all about it afterward, Chebron. There is no time for talking now. His orders must be instantly carried out. Where are the fellows who are spying over you?" "One of them is probably seated outside at the entrance to the farm. You must have passed him as you entered," Amuba replied. "I have not seen more than one at a time since they first came." "Take up your arms and follow me," Jethro said, taking a heavy staff from the corner of the room, and followed by the lads, he went outside the gate. It was now getting dark, and as they passed out a man standing near approached as if to see who they were. Without a word Jethro sprang forward and brought down the staff with tremendous force upon his head, and he fell without a cry upon the road. "There is no fear of his giving the alarm," Jethro said grimly, and set off in a run in the direction of the city at a pace that taxed the powers of Chebron to keep up with. Once or twice as he ran the boy gasped out a question as to his father's safety, but Jethro did not appear to hear him, but kept on at a steady pace. Presently he stopped suddenly and listened. A vague, confused sound was heard in front of them, and Jethro quitted the road and took his course over the fields. Amuba heard the sound increase, and was presently conscious that a crowd of people were passing along the road. "It is well I managed to get through," Jethro said. "They would have made short work of you both had they arrived at the farm and found you unprepared." Jethro did not return to the road, but kept on in an oblique line toward the foot of the hills near the city. "Where are you going, Jethro?" Amuba asked at last. "I am going to Chigron the embalmer. Ameres has arranged with him to hide you there for the present." The boys knew the place, for they had more than once been there to watch the process of embalming the bodies and preparing them for burial. It was an extensive establishment, for Chigron was one of the most celebrated embalmers of the day, and not only did he embalm, but he kept with him men who performed the further processes required, namely the wrapping up in the mummy cloths, and the construction of the great cases and the placing the bodies in them ready to be handed over to their friends. These were usually distinct and separate trades, the embalmers generally returning the bodies to the friends after they had completed the process of embalming. Another set of men then prepared the corpse for burial, while the mummy cases or sarcophagi were prepared by men of another trade. Of the three trades, that of the embalmers was held in by far the highest respect, the work being considered as sacred, and the embalmers ranking and associating with the priests. In Chigron's establishment the men of the three trades worked apart and separate from each other, and although Chigron was in fact at the head of all, he personally superintended only the embalming, the men of the other trades being directed by their own masters, and it was as if the three establishments had been placed near each other simply for the purpose of convenience. When they reached the house of Chigron, Jethro went forward alone and knocked at the door. An attendant presented himself. "Give this ring to Chigron," Jethro said, "and say that the bearer of it would fain speak to him here." In 2 or 3 minutes Chigron himself came out. "I have brought the lads hither in obedience to the order of Ameres," Jethro said. "He told me that he had arranged the matter with you." "And Ameres himself?" Chigron asked. "He is no more," Jethro said. "The villains who sought his ruin have triumphed, and a furious mob this afternoon broke into his house and murdered him. Chebron does not know it yet, though he cannot but suspect that something terrible has happened, as I would not answer his questions, fearing that he might break down when his strength was most needed." The Egyptian uttered an exclamation of sorrow. "Fools and madmen!" he exclaimed. "In all the land none were more worthy of honor than Ameres. He was just and generous, ever ready to befriend those who needed his aid, calm in judgment and powerful in council. Surely the gods must be angry with Egypt when they suffered such a one to fall a victim to the passions of the mob. But where are the lads? I myself will conduct them to the place I have already prepared. The workers have all left, so there is no fear in passing through the house." At Jethro's call the lads came up. "Follow me, my lord," Chigron said to Chebron. "I have had everything in readiness for your reception for some days. Would that your visit had been made on some more cheerful occasion." The embalmer led the way through the portion of the house occupied by himself, then he entered a large apartment whose floor was covered with sawdust. Here on slabs of stone lay a number of bodies of those in the first state of preparation, while in a still larger apartment behind were a number of stone baths each long enough to contain a body. These were occupied by the corpses which had undergone their first state of preparation, and which were now lying covered with a strong solution of salt and water. Beyond again were other chambers for the reception of bodies embalmed by other processes than that of salt. Passing through a door at the rear the lads found themselves in the open air again. Above them the hill rose in a precipitous rock. Chigron led the way along the foot of this for some little distance, and then stopped at a portal hewn in the rock itself. All this time he had carried a lighted lamp, although the chambers in which the dead were lying were illuminated with lamps hanging from the ceiling. Upon entering the portal and closing the door behind him he produced from a niche in the wall several other lamps, lighted them, and gave one to each of his companions. "This," he said, "was cut by a wealthy inhabitant of Thebes centuries ago as a tomb for himself and his family. What happened to him I know not, but the place was never used beyond this chamber, which has been utilized for mummies of sacred animals. Beyond in the main chamber everything is as it was left by those who formed it. There I have during the last 10 days privately stored up such articles as would be necessary for you, and I trust that you will not find yourself uncomfortable." Upon entering the apartment, which was some 20 feet square, they found that the embalmer had not exaggerated what he had done. A table with several settles stood in the middle, 3 couches piled with rushes were placed against the wall, mats had been laid down to cover the floor and give warmth to the feet, and lamps ready for burning stood upon the table. In a corner stood 2 jars of wine, with drinking vessels. "All is here except food," Chigron said. "That I could not prepare until I knew you were coming, but be assured that you shall be served regularly. There is no fear of intrusion from any employed in the establishment. They have no occasion to come out to the back of the house, and probably few know of the existence of this tomb. Should I have any ground for believing that there is danger, I will take other measures for your concealment. Should you need anything do not hesitate to say so. I owe my position to the patronage of my lord Ameres, and there is nothing I would not do to ensure the safety of his son. And now, my lord, I will